My son's wife looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You're no longer welcome in this house." My son said nothing, so I smiled, walked out, and gave them 30 days to vacate mine. She thought she held all the power. She didn't even know whose name was on the mortgage. My name is Marianne Thompson, and at 58, I've learned that life has a peculiar way of testing your strength precisely when you think you've seen it all. Most of my life has revolved around my son, Luke. Raising him alone after losing my husband to cancer 20 years ago was the greatest challenge I ever faced, but also my proudest achievement. Luke was the sun in my sky, the reason I pushed myself every single day, juggling 2 jobs to make sure he had the life he deserved. When Luke introduced me to Amanda, the woman who would become his wife, my heart swelled with hope. She was bright, charming, and seemed genuinely in love with him. Our first dinner together remains vivid in my memory. Amanda laughed freely, engaged me in conversation, and appeared deeply interested in forming a close bond with me. At the end of the night, she hugged me warmly, whispering, "I'm so grateful Luke has such an amazing mother." I genuinely believed Amanda was a blessing, the daughter I never had but always yearned for. For the first year of their marriage, I felt deeply included. Invitations to dinners, holidays, and weekend getaways made me feel valued, and I treasured each moment, thankful to be part of their lives. But then things slowly shifted. Subtly at first, like the chill creeping into a warm room, unnoticed until you find yourself shivering. Amanda began canceling plans at the last minute, citing vague excuses about feeling overwhelmed or needing space. Initially, I chalked it up to newlywed adjustments and busy schedules, reassuring myself it was nothing personal. However, as the months passed, her distant behavior became harder to ignore. Calls went unanswered, texts received short, clipped responses hours later, and invitations gradually stopped altogether. Whenever Luke visited, Amanda rarely accompanied him, and when she did, there was an undeniable tension, an awkwardness so thick you could almost touch it. I attempted to address it indirectly, gently asking Luke if everything was all right. He would simply shrug, dismissing my concerns with reassuring smiles and hugs. "Mom, everything's fine," he'd say. "Amanda's just stressed at work." Yet my instincts whispered otherwise. One particular Sunday afternoon was etched into my memory. I arrived at their home with freshly baked cookies, a small gesture of goodwill, hoping for a casual, friendly visit. Amanda opened the door with a strained smile, clearly unprepared and displeased. "Oh, Marianne, we didn't expect you today," she said flatly, barely hiding her irritation. Embarrassed, I apologized quickly. "I'm sorry, I thought Luke mentioned I'd stop by. I just wanted to say hello." Amanda sighed deeply, not bothering to conceal her annoyance. "Next time, maybe call ahead. Luke is busy and I really don't have the time today." My heart sank as I stood on their doorstep, humiliation burning my cheeks. I handed her the cookies, mumbling an apology before retreating to my car, tears threatening to spill. As I drove home, confusion and hurt intertwined, leaving me to wonder desperately what I'd done to deserve this coldness. The tipping point came weeks later, at Luke and Amanda's housewarming party, an event they'd meticulously planned to celebrate their supposed independence. Luke had called personally, urging me to attend. Despite my apprehension, I agreed, hopeful that things would finally return to normal. Their house buzzed with chatter and laughter, yet the moment I arrived, I felt a shift in the air. Eyes discreetly glanced my way, voices lowered slightly. I brushed it aside, approaching Luke with a warm smile, embracing him tightly. Amanda hovered nearby, her face unreadable. Throughout the evening, I felt Amanda's critical eyes following my every move, making me uneasy. Still, I pushed down my discomfort, determined to remain positive and supportive. Then, in a cruel twist of fate, Amanda decided to deliver a public humiliation I hadn't anticipated. Gathering everyone in the living room, she raised her glass high, a gleaming smile masking her true intentions. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she began warmly, It means so much to Luke and me to have everyone we love here to celebrate our new home." Guests clapped and cheered. I smiled along, unaware that Amanda's next words would change everything. "And Luke," she continued, turning lovingly toward him, "I want to especially thank you for being my strength. We've worked so hard to build a peaceful, independent home. But honestly, it hasn't always been easy, especially with people who can't respect boundaries." Confused murmurs filled the room. My pulse quickened, dread pooling in my stomach. Amanda's gaze zeroed in on me, cold and unflinching. "Marianne, I'm talking about you. Your visits, your calls, your constant interference make our lives incredibly stressful. I've tried politely to hint, but apparently you can't take subtlety. So let me be very clear. From today onward, you're no longer welcome in our home." Gasps echoed through the room. Shock, embarrassment, and hurt cascaded over me, leaving me paralyzed. I searched Luke's face desperately, hoping he'd intervene, but his eyes were cast downward, filled with shame and helplessness. The room blurred through tears. I refused to shed openly. My dignity shattered. I found myself retreating from the gathering I once longed to be part of, silently promising myself that I'd never be this vulnerable again. Sitting alone in my car, tears flowing freely, something stirred within me. Anger mixed with grief, humiliation giving way to fierce determination. Amanda might have thought she was asserting power, but in her haste to humiliate me, she had overlooked something critical. That beautiful home she'd so proudly declared off limits was actually mine. I owned it outright, having bought it as a generous gift to help them start their lives. Amanda didn't realize she'd just banned me from a house legally in my name, and in that powerful moment of clarity, I knew exactly what had to happen next. Amanda was about to discover who truly held the power, and she had unknowingly lit a fire that would forever change the course of our family. After the humiliating night at Luke and Amanda's housewarming party, sleep became elusive. Nights dragged on endlessly, replaying Amanda's cruel words and Luke's passive silence. Every moment seemed tainted by confusion and grief. A profound sense of betrayal gnawed at my heart, making simple tasks seem insurmountable. Days passed in an emotional haze. I tried calling Luke several times, hoping to mend the fracture forming between us, but he ignored my calls. Each unanswered ring deepened the hurt. Amanda's control over him was clear. Luke had become unrecognizable, distant in a way I never imagined possible. I felt isolated, deeply wounded, and humiliated, yet beneath it all simmered a steady, growing anger. Amanda had stripped me of my dignity, my pride, and the very relationship with my son that I'd worked a lifetime to build. I knew I couldn't simply accept this. Something had to change. Reflecting on happier memories became my refuge. I vividly recalled afternoons when Luke was a child, his laughter echoing through our modest home as I cooked dinner. Those simple moments of joy and closeness seemed worlds away now. Each memory, once comforting, now painfully highlighted what I stood to lose permanently. Amanda had entered our lives charmingly, cleverly masking her disdain beneath sweet smiles. Over time, she had isolated Luke from his closest friends, and now, painfully, from me. I wondered what Luke saw in her, how he'd become blind to her subtle manipulations and cutting remarks. Perhaps he was too deep to see clearly, or perhaps he simply feared confrontation. Determined to reclaim some semblance of control, I started to piece together a clearer picture of Amanda's behavior. Recalling subtle but critical incidents, Amanda had always ensured she held the upper hand. During family dinners, she'd frequently contradict my stories, belittling my experiences with thinly veiled sarcasm. Each comment was carefully measured to undermine me subtly, yet effectively. At Luke's birthday, Amanda gifted him an expensive watch, theatrically emphasizing her generosity in front of guests, deliberately overshadowing the heartfelt scrapbook of memories I'd painstakingly crafted. Luke smiled politely at my gift, thanking me softly, but Amanda's sharp laughter and dismissive remarks lingered painfully in my mind. Then there was the night they announced they were moving into the home I had purchased for them as a wedding present. Amanda had taken credit for selecting and arranging the house, subtly omitting my substantial contribution. I had quietly accepted it, unwilling to disrupt their happiness with petty grievances. In hindsight, I realized Amanda was deliberately rewriting the narrative, positioning herself at the center of Luke's life, systematically erasing my role. Conversations with mutual acquaintances confirmed my suspicions. Friends delicately hinted at Amanda's critical remarks about me, subtly questioning my involvement in their lives. This revelation, while painful, provided clarity. Amanda's behavior wasn't spontaneous or merely insensitive. It was deliberate, calculated, designed to alienate me. My heartbreak turned into resolve. I began documenting these incidents, carefully noting the dates, times, and circumstances of Amanda's behavior. It felt strange, almost obsessive, but something deep within me knew that I needed evidence, a clear record of her cruelty. Amanda was strategic. I would have to match her step for step. Yet beneath this newfound determination lay profound sadness. I grappled with the painful realization that the bond I had with my son was damaged, possibly irrevocably. I worried constantly about Luke, questioning if he was truly happy, if he understood the depths of Amanda's manipulation, or if he'd simply chosen compliance to maintain peace. Weeks stretched on, the tension unbroken. Luke finally returned one of my calls, his voice strained and cautious. Our conversation was brief and superficial, avoiding any direct reference to the recent humiliations. "Mom," he finally whispered, clearly uneasy, "maybe give us some space?" Amanda is still pretty upset. Those words felt like a physical blow, but instead of crumbling, I felt clarity solidify within me. Luke, my beloved son, had unknowingly confirmed my worst fears. Amanda controlled their narrative, and I was now the outsider. That moment sharpened my resolve. I loved Luke profoundly, yet love had boundaries, ones Amanda had grossly violated. The realization washed over me. Allowing this to continue would only deepen the wounds. If I didn't stand firm, I risked losing myself entirely. Gathering my courage, I planned my next steps carefully. It wasn't about vengeance. It was about reclaiming dignity, respect, and truth. Amanda had forced my hand, believing she held the power. She was about to learn a valuable lesson. Appearances can be deceptive, and true power rarely lies where one assumes. As the evening drew to a close, I stood on my porch, gazing at the sky, clear and vast, wondering how everything had spiraled so drastically. A gentle breeze whispered around me, steadying my nerves. I knew the days ahead would be challenging, emotionally charged, and difficult. But for the first time in weeks, I felt ready. Amanda believed she had won, but she underestimated a mother's resolve. I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for the very essence of my relationship with Luke. With determination building within me, I understood fully what lay ahead, a battle for respect, dignity, and truth, one I was finally prepared to fight. The calmness I felt wasn't resignation. It was the quiet before a storm Amanda would never see coming. Days turned into weeks, and the emotional strain weighed heavily upon me. The clarity I had gained brought no immediate relief. Rather, it heightened my awareness of every subtle jab, every cold dismissal, every calculated silence Amanda used to wound me further. Luke, caught between his wife and mother, withdrew completely, becoming little more than a silent spectator to our growing animosity. The tension built steadily until one sunny afternoon, when I reluctantly agreed to attend a family barbecue at their home, hoping desperately for a truce, however temporary. The scent of charcoal and laughter filled the backyard, masking the undercurrent of discomfort I felt. Guests chatted casually, oblivious to the emotional turmoil within me. Amanda played the gracious host, smiling warmly at friends and neighbors. Yet, when our eyes met, her facade cracked just enough to reveal disdain, a silent warning to keep my distance. Throughout the gathering, she strategically avoided me, effortlessly steering conversations away whenever I tried to engage Luke. Determined not to let her behavior unsettle me, I approached Luke with a forced yet hopeful smile, extending an olive branch. "Luke, it's so nice seeing everyone together. Maybe we could chat privately for a moment." Before Luke could respond, Amanda swiftly intervened, gripping his arm protectively. "Luke's helping me entertain our guests, Marianne. Maybe some other time." Her words dripped with polite hostility, silencing the nearby chatter as awkwardness spread like wildfire. I retreated, cheeks burning with embarrassment and anger simmering beneath my forced composure. It was yet another instance of Amanda publicly asserting dominance, deliberately humiliating me while Luke stood helplessly by her side. The breaking point, however, came later that evening. As guests gradually left, I lingered, hoping for one final chance to speak privately with my son. Amanda busied herself inside, appearing distracted. Seizing the moment, I quietly approached Luke on the patio. "Luke," I began softly, my voice thick with emotion. "We need to talk." He hesitated, clearly uncomfortable, but finally met my gaze, his eyes filled with guilt. "Mom, I don't know how to fix this. Amanda's my wife, and His words were cut short by Amanda's sudden appearance, her voice sharply slicing through our moment of connection. "What's going on here?" Her accusatory glare bore into me, challenging, daring me to defy her. Before I could respond, Luke quickly stepped away, retreating once more into silence. Amanda's lips curled into a cold smile, her victory apparent. "Marianne," she said firmly, eyes flashing dangerously, "I've been clear about boundaries. You're constantly pushing Luke, pressuring him. If you really cared, you'd respect our wishes and back off." Each word felt like a physical strike, deepening wounds already raw from weeks of emotional battering. Something inside me snapped. I could no longer endure her relentless cruelty, her blatant attempts to control and isolate. Steeling myself, I met Amanda's gaze squarely, my voice steady and filled with resolve. "Amanda, you've crossed a line. You've manipulated my son, humiliated me repeatedly, and treated me with absolute contempt. This stops now." Amanda laughed bitterly, unfazed. "Or what? You'll make another pathetic scene, embarrass yourself further? Please, Marianne, know when you're beaten." Her words hung in the air, a direct challenge I could no longer ignore. Drawing upon every ounce of strength I possessed, I stepped closer, unwavering. "Actually, Amanda, I'm not beaten. You've made a serious miscalculation, assuming you have all the power, that you control everything. But there's something you clearly don't understand." Her smile faltered slightly, uncertainty flickering briefly behind her confident exterior. "What exactly don't I understand?" I leaned in slightly, speaking slowly and deliberately. "This house, the one you're so desperate to control, is legally mine. My name is on the deed. I bought it as a gift for you both, yes, but I retained ownership, and after tonight, I'm done tolerating your cruelty." Amanda's eyes widened in shock, disbelief rendering her speechless for the first time. I took a breath, steadying myself before delivering my final blow. "You have 30 days to vacate my property. This isn't revenge, Amanda, it's justice. It's time you learn there are consequences for your actions." A stunned silence engulfed us both. Amanda's earlier confidence shattered visibly, replaced by panic and fury. I turned away, walking calmly toward my car, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders despite knowing the difficult path ahead. As I drove home, the enormity of what I'd just done hit me fully. I'd reclaimed my dignity and power, but at the cost of deepening the rift between myself and Luke. Despite this, I knew in my heart it was necessary, perhaps the only way to save our relationship from permanent damage. Amanda had forced my hand, pushing me to a point where compromise was impossible. Now she faced the stark reality of her actions. confronting the harsh truth that she'd underestimated a mother's strength, resilience, and determination to fight for the respect and love she deserved. The drive home after my confrontation with Amanda felt surreal. My hands trembled slightly against the steering wheel, but within me burned a quiet, resolute strength. I had stood up for myself, reclaiming dignity Amanda tried so hard to strip away, yet I knew this wasn't a victory. Not yet. The hardest battles were still ahead. At home, the quietness of my empty house magnified my solitude, reminding me bitterly of the family life Amanda had effectively robbed from me. Wandering through rooms filled with echoes of happier times, I allowed myself a moment of grief, but that sadness quickly transformed into a fierce determination. Amanda had ignited a fire within me, one fueled by justice and the urgent need to reclaim what was rightfully mine. I poured myself a cup of tea, trying to organize my racing thoughts. Amanda's shocked face replayed vividly in my mind, offering a fleeting sense of satisfaction. Still, beneath that satisfaction lay deep sorrow. Luke's silence and passive complicity hurt more than Amanda's hostility ever could. My son, once my closest ally, had chosen the path of least resistance, allowing Amanda to assert her cruelty unchecked. In quiet reflection, I acknowledged my responsibility in allowing Amanda's behavior to escalate unchecked. My intentions were always pure. I wanted nothing more than Luke's happiness, even at the expense of my own. But it was clear now that boundaries had been severely neglected. Pulling out important documents from a secure drawer, I carefully reviewed the deed to the house. My name stood boldly printed, a stark confirmation of the power Amanda mistakenly believed was hers. I remembered the day clearly when I'd purchased the house, excited and hopeful about providing Luke and Amanda with a beautiful start to their married life. Never had I imagined it would become a battleground. Sitting at my kitchen table, surrounded by papers and memories, I made careful notes, ensuring every detail of ownership and financial responsibility was meticulously recorded. Amanda had shown herself adept at twisting facts. I needed to be ready for her next move. The next morning brought clarity. After a restless sleep filled with troubling dreams, I awoke determined and focused. I contacted my lawyer, laying out the facts clearly. His advice was straightforward and reassuring. Legally, I had every right to reclaim my property. Morally, I knew my heart was justified. Throughout the following days, Amanda's reaction was predictable. Calls and messages from Luke flooded my phone, each one more frantic than the last. My heart ached deeply each time I saw his name appear on my screen, yet I resisted answering immediately. Luke needed to understand the gravity of his silence, the cost of his complacency. Finally, I chose to answer one call, preparing myself emotionally. Luke's voice trembled, clearly emotional. "Mom, please, you can't do this. We have nowhere else to go. Amanda's devastated." Listening to him, my heart wrenched painfully. Yet his plea clarified something crucial. Luke still didn't fully grasp the hurt Amanda had caused, the damage she'd inflicted. "Luke," I spoke gently but firmly, my voice carrying the weight of every wound Amanda had inflicted. "Do you understand how deeply your silence hurt me? How Amanda has systematically pushed me from your life? I didn't want this, but she's left me no choice." "Mom, please," Luke whispered, his voice strained, desperate. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I love you both." His words tore at my heart, but I remained resolute. "Loving us both doesn't mean allowing Amanda's cruelty to go unchecked. I've always wanted your happiness, but that can't come at the cost of my dignity." Luke's silence was heavy, filled with guilt and realization. Eventually, he spoke again, quieter this time. "What can we do? How do we fix this?" "Accountability," I replied clearly. "Amanda needs to recognize her actions have consequences. Only then can we heal." Days continued to pass, each one filled with emotional confrontations and tense silence. Amanda tried several tactics: threats, pleading, manipulation, but I stood firm. My lawyer remained closely involved, ensuring every step was legal, justified, and carefully documented. Friends and family began to choose sides, a painful reminder of the consequences of Amanda's manipulations. Each interaction clarified who genuinely understood the complexity of our situation and who was merely swayed by Amanda's victimhood performance. Despite the emotional toll, a powerful sense of empowerment grew within me daily. The clarity of reclaiming control over my own life provided strength I hadn't felt in years. Amanda had tried to diminish my worth, to erase me entirely from my son's life. Instead, she inadvertently reminded me of my own strength, resilience, and value. One evening, as I sat quietly on my porch, reflecting on the turbulent weeks, I recognized the profound truth Amanda had unintentionally taught me. I was stronger than I'd ever believed. Facing Amanda's hostility had forced me to rediscover my worth, reaffirm my boundaries, and reclaim my dignity. Amanda had underestimated me, believing I would quietly accept humiliation. Instead, she had awakened a resilience she could never extinguish. The power I had reclaimed wasn't just about property, it was about respect, dignity, and self-worth. Amanda would soon realize the depth of her miscalculation, understanding fully the true power of a mother's resolve. The tension mounted steadily as the 30-day deadline approached. Amanda's anger flared unpredictably, alternating between bouts of rage and emotional manipulation. Luke, caught in the crossfire, looked increasingly worn, a shadow of the vibrant son I had raised. I felt each passing day keenly, knowing that this confrontation, though painful, was vital. I invited Luke to meet me alone at a small cafe downtown, a neutral ground away from Amanda's immediate influence. The cafe bustled with quiet chatter and the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee, offering a stark contrast to the emotional turmoil brewing within me. Luke arrived, looking exhausted but relieved to see me. His tentative smile warmed my heart briefly, but the sadness in his eyes was unmistakable. We ordered our coffee. The initial small talk, awkward and strained. Eventually, Luke broke the silence, his voice thick with emotion. "Mom, Amanda's terrified. We still haven't found anywhere to move. I don't want to lose you." My heart ached hearing his pain, yet my resolve held firm. "Luke, I love you more than words can express, but Amanda needs to acknowledge her behavior. She's hurt me deeply, and I can't keep tolerating it." Luke sighed heavily, running his hand through his hair in frustration. "I know she's difficult, Mom, but isn't there another way? Can't we move past this without losing our home?" I reached across the table, gently grasping his hand. "Luke, it was never just about the house. Amanda's actions aren't isolated incidents. They're a pattern of cruelty and disrespect. Real reconciliation requires accountability, not avoidance." He looked down, silent for a long moment, processing my words carefully. Finally, he met my gaze, sincerity radiating from him. "I understand, Mom, but she won't listen to me. Maybe you could speak to her directly one more time?" His request caught me by surprise. The thought of facing Amanda again filled me with dread, yet I recognized the importance of making one final attempt to resolve this peacefully. "All right," I conceded, my voice steady despite the apprehension churning within me. "I'll speak with Amanda, but Luke, she needs to genuinely listen." 2 days later, I arrived at their house, my heart pounding. Amanda opened the door cautiously, suspicion and resentment clouding her expression. Without greeting, she led me inside, the tension palpable between us. Sitting in their meticulously arranged living room, Amanda wasted no time. "Luke says you want to talk. Say whatever you need to quickly." I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts carefully. "Amanda, despite everything, I don't want our family fractured forever. But your behavior, your insults, your cruelty, has consequences. To move forward, you must acknowledge the pain you've caused." Amanda bristled visibly, crossing her arms defensively. I've done nothing but protect my marriage. You're the one who can't respect boundaries. Frustration surged within me, yet I remained calm, steady. Amanda, there's a vast difference between setting boundaries and deliberately hurting someone. You've systematically undermined my relationship with my son, publicly humiliated me, and showed me open hostility. This isn't about boundaries, it's about respect. Amanda's eyes flashed angrily. Respect? You threw us out of our home. How respectful is that? The home was never yours, I responded quietly, firmly. It was my gift, my property. You never respected that generosity, just like you never respected me. Silence stretched between us, heavy and charged. Amanda's eyes flickered briefly, a moment of vulnerability before her hardened exterior returned. So, what now? You get your revenge and we're homeless? No, I replied steadily, looking her directly in the eye. Now, you have a choice. Acknowledge your actions, make genuine amends, and we find a way forward. Or continue denying your behavior and accept the consequences of your pride. Amanda's jaw tightened, clearly struggling internally. Eventually, she muttered reluctantly, I'll think about it. I stood, sensing our conversation had reached its limit. Amanda, please understand. I don't want revenge. I want respect. Until you realize the difference, nothing changes. Driving home afterward, I felt emotionally drained yet deeply empowered. The confrontation hadn't resolved everything, but it clarified an important truth. Healing required honesty, vulnerability, and mutual respect. Amanda had a difficult choice ahead, one only she could make. Regardless of her decision, I'd done everything possible to bridge the gap. Now, it was up to Amanda, and ultimately, Luke, to choose their path. Meanwhile, I would stand firm, resolute in the respect and dignity I had reclaimed. As the final days ticked down, tension hovered heavily between us, a tangible cloud permeating every interaction. Luke became increasingly withdrawn, visibly torn by his divided loyalties. My heart broke seeing him struggle, yet I understood that this painful period was necessary for lasting healing. The deadline was unavoidable, and it loomed large over all our lives. I received countless calls and messages from mutual friends and relatives, some supportive, others accusatory, questioning my decision. Each call drained me emotionally, but my resolve never wavered. I knew I had done everything possible to restore respect and dignity to our relationship. The evening before the deadline, Amanda unexpectedly appeared at my doorstep. Her face was pale, eyes red-rimmed from obvious distress. For a fleeting moment, sympathy rose within me, but I quickly steadied myself, aware of Amanda's manipulative tendencies. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly, her usual arrogance noticeably absent. I invited her inside, wary but willing to listen. We sat awkwardly in my living room, the silence stretching painfully between us before Amanda finally spoke, her voice small and hesitant. "I know I've made mistakes, Marianne. I acted selfishly, but please reconsider the eviction. We truly have nowhere else to go." Hearing Amanda admit fault, even partially, surprised me, yet I remained cautious. "Amanda, I'm glad you acknowledge mistakes were made, but actions speak louder than words. This isn't just about an apology, it's about genuine change and accountability." She shifted uncomfortably, clearly struggling with vulnerability. "I'll try to be better. Luke is devastated. Can't we stay if I promise to change?" Her desperation was palpable, yet I recognized her words as reactionary rather than deeply introspective. "Amanda, genuine change isn't immediate. It requires reflection, honesty, and time. You've hurt me deeply. My decision wasn't made lightly, and it won't change overnight." Amanda's eyes flashed briefly, frustration flickering through her carefully controlled expression. "You're punishing us excessively for something I've apologized for. Isn't that enough?" I shook my head calmly but firmly. Apologies without meaningful change are meaningless, Amanda. I want more than empty promises. I need proof that things will genuinely improve. Her anger surfaced abruptly, the polite facade cracking under pressure. You're impossible. You claim you want resolution but refuse to give us a fair chance. Luke and I are your family. How can you be so heartless? Her accusation stung, but I remained composed. Amanda, family doesn't treat each other with cruelty. Family doesn't isolate or manipulate. If you truly want to fix things, it has to start with sincerity and accountability, not anger and blame. She stood abruptly, visibly agitated, her voice shaking with barely contained fury. Fine, have it your way. But just know you're destroying your relationship with Luke, too. As Amanda stormed out, slamming the door behind her, my heart sank. Her reaction proved she hadn't truly grasped the depth of damage her actions caused. Still, I had hoped for genuine reconciliation, not further division. The following morning, I met Luke briefly. His demeanor was resigned, yet understanding. Mom, I know this is hard for everyone, but I finally see clearly. Amanda needs to understand consequences. Whatever happens, please know I love you. His words, though bittersweet, offered profound comfort. I embraced him tightly, whispering softly, I love you too, Luke. Always. Returning home, I faced the difficult truth head on. Amanda's pride and stubbornness had prevented real resolution. Issuing the eviction had been the hardest choice of my life, yet it had forced crucial revelations and reflections. I knew deep down that this difficult ultimatum was the only path toward genuine healing. As painful as the immediate future appeared, hope lingered quietly in the corners of my heart. I had reclaimed my power, dignity, and self-respect, and those were the foundations upon which true reconciliation could eventually flourish. The immediate aftermath of issuing the eviction notice was tumultuous, marked by a whirlwind of emotions and confrontations. My phone buzzed incessantly with notifications, voicemails, texts, and social media messages. Friends, extended family, and even acquaintances weighed in, each bringing their own judgment and perspectives. The division was clear and heartbreaking, forcing me to acknowledge just how deeply Amanda's influence had permeated our social circle. Days after the ultimatum, I received a particularly harsh voicemail from Amanda's mother. Her words dripped venomously from the receiver, accusing me of cruelty, selfishness, and spite. How can you sleep at night knowing you're throwing your own family onto the street? Amanda has always spoken highly of you, and this is how you repay her kindness? Listening to that message, my heart twisted painfully. Amanda's manipulation had extended beyond Luke, poisoning relationships I'd cultivated carefully over decades. Yet, despite the sting of betrayal, I felt no regret about my decision. Every harsh word, every accusation only strengthened my resolve, reinforcing the urgent necessity of boundaries. Luke visited several times in those chaotic days, visibly exhausted and conflicted. Each interaction tugged painfully at my heartstrings. Our conversations were tinged with a sadness that neither of us fully acknowledged, each careful to avoid worsening the emotional wounds. Yet beneath the polite exchanges, I sensed Luke grappling deeply with his loyalty to Amanda versus his innate sense of fairness and love for me. In quiet moments alone, I replayed memories of Luke's childhood, his innocent laughter, heartfelt hugs, and trusting eyes looking up at me. My maternal instincts screamed to shield him from pain, to undo the turmoil ripping apart our family. Yet logic and self-respect insisted this pain was essential, a harsh yet necessary step toward genuine healing and accountability. Amanda's attempts at emotional manipulation became increasingly erratic and desperate. She oscillated between bitter anger and exaggerated displays of distress, publicly portraying herself as a victim wronged unjustly. On social media, her narratives painted me in the harshest possible light, eliciting waves of sympathy from those who knew only her carefully crafted version of events. At first, I felt compelled to respond, to defend myself against the onslaught of misrepresentation. But soon I realized it was a fruitless endeavor. Those genuinely interested in the truth reached out privately, offering support and understanding. Those swayed easily by Amanda's manipulations weren't worth the emotional toll. One evening, Luke arrived unexpectedly at my doorstep, his appearance more disheveled than I'd ever seen. His eyes were red-rimmed, his posture heavy with weariness. "Mom," he began quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "Amanda's refusing to even look for another place. She says you'll cave eventually, that she'll win this war." His words struck deeply, crystallizing the grim reality. Amanda viewed this as a war, a battle to assert dominance, rather than an opportunity for genuine reconciliation. My voice trembled slightly as I responded, determined but deeply saddened. "Luke, I'm not fighting a war. This isn't about winning or losing. It's about respect and accountability. I wish Amanda could see that." Luke sighed deeply, running a shaky hand through his hair. "I know, Mom, but Amanda, she just doesn't see things that way. She thrives on control, and right now she feels cornered." His honesty was a relief yet painful acknowledgement. Luke saw clearly now, yet remained caught in Amanda's manipulative grip. I reached out gently, squeezing his hand reassuringly. "Luke, I can't control Amanda's actions. All I can do is stand firm in my boundaries and hope you'll eventually see the necessity of it." He nodded slowly, understanding but visibly struggling. "Mom, I see it now. Clearly. I'm just terrified of losing either of you." His vulnerability, rare and heartfelt, shattered my remaining emotional defenses. Tears welled up, blurring my vision as I embraced him tightly. "Luke, you'll never lose me. But Amanda needs to understand she can't control and manipulate without consequences. That's what this is about, respect and dignity, not revenge." We sat in silence for a long while, the weight of our shared sorrow hanging heavily between us. Eventually, Luke opened up further, sharing fears he'd held inside for years, concerns about Amanda's influence, his own insecurities, and his genuine confusion about navigating our strained relationship. Each word was a revelation, deepening our emotional bond and offering a glimmer of hope amid the turmoil. When Luke finally left, I felt emotionally exhausted, yet profoundly grateful for our honest exchange. The silence in the house echoed deeply, amplifying my loneliness, yet strengthening my resolve. Over the following days, I received messages of support from unexpected sources, neighbors who quietly noticed Amanda's treatment of me, old friends reconnecting with words of encouragement, even former acquaintances who shared their similar experiences of family conflict. Each message fortified my determination, reminding me I wasn't alone. Though the path ahead remained uncertain and undeniably challenging, I felt prepared. Amanda's cruelty and manipulations had unintentionally revealed my deepest strengths, resilience, and unwavering commitment to fairness. The fractures within our family weren't merely wounds, they were openings for essential growth and genuine healing. And for the first time, despite the pain, I felt genuinely optimistic about the possibilities ahead. As the eviction date arrived, I felt an unsettling combination of relief and sorrow. I knew this decision, though difficult, was necessary. Still, the thought of Luke having to leave the home we'd envisioned for him hurt deeply. Yet beneath the ache was a sense of undeniable empowerment, a quiet confidence I'd long forgotten I possessed. That morning, I stood on my porch, sipping coffee and bracing myself for the challenging day ahead. Moments later, my phone vibrated, Luke's name appearing on the screen. I answered hesitantly, my voice betraying my nervousness. "Luke?" His voice was strained, tired yet steady. "Mom, we're packed. Amanda finally agreed to leave. I wanted you to know." Relief washed over me, but guilt mingled closely behind. "Luke, I'm so sorry it's come to this." "I know," he replied softly, But Mom, it was necessary. Amanda needs to understand her actions have consequences. And honestly, I needed this wake-up call too. His words touched me profoundly, affirming my difficult choice. We agreed to meet later, a final walkthrough to ensure the home was properly vacated. That afternoon, I arrived at the house, its facade still beautiful, yet now tinged with sadness. Luke waited at the door, visibly emotional. We embraced silently, conveying mutual support and understanding. Inside, the emptiness echoed starkly. As we moved through rooms that once held laughter and warmth, Luke shared memories openly. He recalled moments of happiness, but also instances where he had overlooked Amanda's subtle cruelty, his regret painfully evident. Eventually, Amanda joined us, her demeanor subdued yet defiant. She avoided my gaze initially, focused instead on minor details around the home. Finally, she spoke, her voice uncharacteristically soft. "Marianne, I still don't agree with your decision, but I realize now I underestimated you." Her admission caught me off guard, yet I remained composed, responding calmly. "Amanda, this wasn't about winning or losing. It was about respect." She nodded slowly, seemingly resigned. "Maybe one day we'll see eye to eye, but not now." Luke watched our exchange silently, clearly conflicted. I addressed him gently. "Luke, I'm here for you always. But moving forward means boundaries, respect, and honesty." Luke stepped closer, sincerity radiating from him. "Mom, I understand, truly. Amanda and I have a lot to work through, but I want you to know I respect you deeply. Thank you for reminding me what's important." Amanda's eyes flashed briefly, irritation evident, but she remained silent. After a tense pause, she turned toward Luke, softly saying, "I'll be outside." As Amanda left, Luke and I shared a final, meaningful embrace. Mom, choosing yourself, standing firm, was brave. I hope someday Amanda realizes that too. Returning home later, solitude enveloped me. Yet for the first time in months, the silence felt comforting rather than oppressive. I'd reclaimed my dignity and rediscovered strength I'd long forgotten. Choosing myself hadn't been easy. It was emotionally costly, but necessary for genuine healing and growth. Reflecting quietly, I recognized the powerful truth Amanda had inadvertently revealed. Respecting oneself meant making difficult, sometimes painful choices. It required strength, resilience, and courage, qualities I now fully embraced. Though the future remained uncertain, I faced it confidently. The wounds would heal, relationships could mend, but self-respect, once reclaimed, would remain forever. Choosing myself was not merely an act of self-preservation, it was an affirmation of my worth, a powerful declaration of self-love and strength. Days turned into weeks following their departure, and my house, though quiet, gradually transformed from a place filled with sorrow to a sanctuary of peace and reflection. Each day brought new insights, offering me clarity and reaffirming the courage of my recent decisions. Luke called regularly, our conversations growing deeper and more honest than ever before. Without Amanda's looming influence, he opened up, expressing remorse and newfound awareness of how deeply Amanda's manipulations had affected our family. Each conversation, although emotionally charged, provided reassurance that healing was genuinely underway. One afternoon, Luke invited me to visit his new apartment, a modest but welcoming space he'd secured independently. I felt nervous yet hopeful as I approached his door, carrying a small housewarming gift and a heart filled with cautious optimism. When Luke greeted me, his smile was warm and sincere, free from the shadows of previous conflicts. Inside, the apartment reflected Luke's genuine personality, minimalist yet inviting, humble yet carefully curated. It was evident he had taken deliberate steps to reclaim his individuality, free from Amanda's influence. We sat together in his cozy living room, sipping tea and cautiously navigating conversations about his future, his plans, and his growing self-awareness. "Mom," Luke began gently, his voice steady and earnest, "this place isn't grand, but for the first time, it feels truly mine. Amanda and I are still talking, but I'm clear now about setting boundaries. You showed me how important that is." His words warmed my heart deeply. I responded carefully, proud yet cautious. "Luke, establishing boundaries is difficult, especially with those we love, but it's essential for healthy relationships. I'm glad you're finding clarity." Luke nodded thoughtfully, clearly absorbing my words. "It's strange, painful even, but necessary. Amanda needs time to reflect, and so do I. But for now, I'm focused on healing, and I hope you are too." Our conversation flowed easily after that, exploring memories, dreams, and mutual hopes for the future. For the first time in months, laughter punctuated our conversation naturally, restoring warmth previously overshadowed by conflict. As I left, our embrace lingered, carrying mutual respect, love, and genuine understanding. Returning home that evening, the solitude of my house felt less like loneliness and more like peaceful solitude. It was a profound shift, one that symbolized my emotional journey from heartbreak to empowerment. My surroundings no longer felt oppressive, but liberating, reflecting my reclaimed sense of self. In the following weeks, my days filled with activities I'd long neglected: gardening, reading, reconnecting with friends, and even exploring new hobbies. Each experience was a gentle reminder of my independence and strength, affirming my newfound confidence and self-worth. Unexpectedly, Amanda reached out, sending a lengthy message acknowledging some of her faults and expressing regret for her actions. Though cautious, I responded respectfully, emphasizing my willingness to forgive but maintaining clear boundaries. Our dialogue was tentative but marked the potential for future healing. Each interaction, each moment of reflection, reinforced a powerful truth. Choosing myself had been painful, yet essential. I had stood firm, reclaimed my dignity, and established a foundation for genuine reconciliation and mutual respect. As the days passed, the emotional wounds gradually healed, replaced by a quiet strength and profound clarity. I realized my journey wasn't merely about reclaiming property or power. It was about embracing self-respect, authenticity, and resilience. And as I stepped confidently into this new beginning, I felt hopeful, empowered, and finally at peace. There's a quiet power that comes with enduring heartbreak and walking through fire with your dignity intact. In the stillness that followed the storm, I began to recognize not just what I had lost, but everything I had regained: my strength, my voice, my sense of self-worth, long buried under years of compromise and silence. One rainy afternoon, I stood by the large bay window in my kitchen, watching droplets race each other down the glass. My garden, once overgrown and forgotten, had bloomed again under my hands. Hydrangeas I thought would never return, that spring had burst into color, wild, unapologetic, and beautiful. A fitting metaphor, I thought, for a woman rediscovering herself after being stripped bare. The house felt different now. No longer a battlefield, no longer a monument to what had gone wrong. It had become a sacred space again, a place of healing. Every corner, every room held memories, yes, but now they also held meaning, growth, and hope. Some mornings I would sit with my tea and read, but most often I wrote. I poured everything I had held in for years onto paper. Letters I'd never sent, conversations I wished I had, apologies I never received. Pages and pages of pain transformed into understanding. Writing became a mirror, a witness to the woman I had become. Flawed, yes, but unflinching. People started to see the change in me. Friends who once pitied me now spoke with admiration. Even distant relatives, those who had initially questioned my choices, called to say they finally understood. I wasn't cold. I wasn't vengeful. I had simply chosen not to drown in someone else's chaos. Luke continued to visit, sometimes with a sadness in his eyes I couldn't erase, but there was also gratitude. He began to talk less about Amanda and more about his own identity, his dreams, his regrets, and finally, his accountability. Our conversations grew more open, less guarded. We were rebuilding, slowly, carefully. One evening, as we sat on the back porch watching the sun set behind the trees, he turned to me and said, "Mom, I think I spent so much time trying to keep peace with Amanda that I lost my own voice. You never did, and I'm sorry it took me so long to see it." That moment meant everything. I didn't need an apology from Amanda anymore. I didn't need approval from anyone. The closure I once thought would come from others had come from within. The version of me who had once begged to be accepted was gone. In her place stood a woman who had learned how to let go, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. Forgiveness, I realized, wasn't something you offered just to others. It was something you owed yourself. I had spent years apologizing for taking up space, for being emotional, for needing respect. No more. I was done shrinking. The pain hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed. It had become a blueprint, a path forward. As summer rolled in, I planned a small gathering at my house. Nothing grand, just a few close friends, laughter, and warmth. I baked for the first time in months. I decorated with old family photos, not as reminders of what had been lost, but of everything I had fought to preserve. And when people arrived, they didn't find a broken woman. They found a whole one. In every conversation, every smile that evening, I realized I was no longer living in reaction to Amanda, or to Luke, or to anyone else. I was living for me, on my terms. That night, after everyone had gone, I stepped out into the garden barefoot, letting the grass brush against my skin. I looked up at the stars and whispered a quiet thank you, not to anyone in particular, but to life itself, for breaking me, for rebuilding me, for teaching me that power doesn't always look like shouting or slamming doors. Sometimes it looks like saying nothing at all, just choosing to walk away quietly with your head held high. I am Marianne, a mother, a woman, and finally, once again, my own person.